All right, let's jump right into this explainer and kick off our investigation into the 600-year mystery of the Cambodian Empire. We're going to be piecing together history like a giant puzzle today. We're looking at a civilization that, at its absolute peak, was the mightiest kingdom in all of Southeast Asia. But you know what makes this story so utterly fascinating? It's how much of it was hidden, encoded, or just entirely left out of the official record. So today, we are going to crack the code of Angkor. So here's our roadmap for cracking that code. We'll start with the mystery of Angkor, move on to reading the ancient stones, look at the blueprint of kingship, explore gods, heroes, and politicians, uncover the invisible society, and finally, we'll wrap up by decoding Angkor Wat. Okay, part one, the mystery of Angkor. Like I mentioned, at its peak, this was the mightiest kingdom in Southeast Asia. I mean, they were drawing visitors and tribute from as far away as present-day Burma and Malaysia. And these three dates right here, they really frame our mystery. You have 802 CE, which marks the traditional founding when King Jayavarman II performed rituals to become a universal monarch. Then skip ahead to 1150, which is basically the culmination of their architectural genius. And finally, 1431 marks the end of their period of regional dominance. But as we're going to see, the real story is much, much harder to piece together from the ground level. Actually, scratch that whole abandoned idea. Angkor Wat was probably never truly abandoned, but remained an active site for centuries after the empire supposedly fell. Moving on to part two. Reading the ancient stones. Let's take a look at our primary evidence. Because unlike modern history, we don't exactly have daily newspapers or personal diaries from the Khmer Empire to rely on. What we do have are typical 9th century inscriptions, like this one. Sure, they're meticulously dated, but they are highly selective in what they actually tell us. Imagine trying to piece together the entire history of the United States using literally nothing but obituaries, a few property deeds, and some 4th of July speeches. That is exactly the kind of challenge scholars are facing with Angkor. Our source material actually has this beautiful way of describing this erratic record. It compares it to hundreds of torches lighting up a dark landscape. A torch flares up, right? And an inscription tells us a specific temple was dedicated to an Indian god on a very specific date, and it even lists the exact number of slaves attached to it. But then, the light just goes out, and we are left completely in the dark about how long that temple was actually used or what on earth happened to those people. And you see, this divided historical record kind of forces a massive bias. On one hand, you've got these Sanskrit poems giving us this grand top-down view. They are entirely focused on proclaiming the incredible, godlike grandeur of the kings. But on the other hand, the inscriptions written in the local Khmer language give us the gritty, bottom-up administrative reality. They're detailing, mundane jurisdictional squabbles and carefully registering commodities like slaves. It's essentially two completely different realities carved right into the exact same landscape. Which brings us to part three, the blueprint of kingship. So, working with just these fragmented little torches of history, how did these rulers actually consolidate their power and leave such a massive mark on the earth? Well, we can actually see a strict triadic pattern established by King Indravarman back in the 9th century. It was a literal 3-step blueprint for becoming a great Angkorian king. Step 1. Sponsor a massive irrigation reservoir. Indravarman's covered roughly 650 acres. Step 2, honor your ancestors by installing statues of them in the guise of gods. And step 3, erect a stepped pyramid temple mountain. And this final pyramid wasn't just a fancy building, okay? It was a physical replica of Mount Meru, the mythical home of the Hindu gods, and it would ultimately serve as the king's very own tomb. All right, part 4, gods, heroes, and politicians. You gotta wonder, who were these guys? Men who wielded such immense power that they could quite literally reshape the earth to mirror heaven? Well, being a king at Angkor essentially meant playing 3 simultaneous roles. First, to the rural population, he had this divine relationship with the earth spirit, specifically Shiva, who is responsible for bringing the vital rains for agriculture. Second, to the literate elite, he was the embodiment of epic Indian heroes, like a living superlative, standing high above society. And third, behind the scenes, he had to be a remarkably shrewd political operator. He's managing complex networks of patronage, settling obscure land squabbles, and constantly rewarding loyalty just to survive. Take a look at this physical art. This 9th century guardian spirit from the Preah Ko temple is exactly how they projected that divine and heroic status to the world, firmly cementing their unquestionable authority. The king was seen as superhuman, occupying the absolute top of a meticulously organized, downward-flowing society. Now for part 5, the invisible society. This is where we hit the missing pieces of our puzzle, the folks deliberately left out of these grand elite monuments, the real people who actually carved those stones and dug out those 650-acre reservoirs. Think about it. What did a slave at Angkor actually think about his master? It's a question that kind of jolts you, right? Because we suddenly realize we simply don't know. We have absolutely no written records giving us the internal thoughts, the folk beliefs, or the life stories of the ordinary people who literally built the empire. The vast majority of people at Angkor were subjects. They were entirely at the disposition of their patrons. While we have these gorgeous, pristine depictions of heavenly angels, like this breathtaking Voda from an 11th century temple, the gritty reality on the ground was vastly different. Everyday people were often treated as disposable commodities. They were traded around, gifted to temples, and assigned just bewildering numbers of tasks. Their real voices, completely invisible in the historical record, replaced instead by the highly idealized art of the elite.
And finally, part 6, decoding Angkor Wat.
Let's see how all of this culminates into the ultimate expression of this society's worldview. It's time to crack the crowning architectural achievement commissioned by King Suryavarman II in the early 12th century. 200. That is the staggering number of hectares this single temple complex covers. That is almost 500 acres of pure, unrestrained ambition. Suryavarman II had unified a totally fragmented kingdom, and he just poured all that consolidated wealth and labor into a monument dedicated to the god Vishnu, a monument we now know today as Angkor Wat.
But to actually decode the temple, modern scholars in the 1970s had to figure out how the learned men who designed the blueprints actually thought. And they discovered the secret lay in a very specific ancient Cambodian unit of measurement called the hat, which comes out to about 0.4 meters. Once researchers started measuring the significant dimensions of Angkor Wat in hats, a pretty stunning secret revealed itself.
Okay, get ready, because here is the mind-bending reveal. Researchers found that the physical distances between the western entrance and the central tower perfectly correlate with the mythical lengths of the Hindu eras of time, known as the yugas. I'm talking exact measurements of 1,296, 867, and 439 hats. These align absolutely flawlessly with the thousands of years in the Treta, Dwapara, and Kali yugas. The architects had literally, physically encoded the cosmic progression of time into the very floor plan of the building itself.
Now, Angkor Wat is super unique because it actually opens to the west. In ancient Khmer culture, the west was associated with death, and also with the deity Vishnu. Because of this, as a visitor walks forward into the temple, moving away from that western entrance and heading towards this central tower, you are navigating a massive spatial pun. You are literally walking backward through the eras of time, leaving the current degraded age and approaching the golden moment of creation right at the center.
And if that wasn't enough, add in this deliberate astronomical alignment. If you stand just in front of the western entrance on June 21st, the summer solstice, the sun rises precisely over the central tower. This was the exact beginning of the solar year for Indian astronomers. And remember the king who built this whole thing, Suryavarman? His very name translates to protected by the sun. They literally built a 500-acre cosmic clock, calendar, and temple combined, all just to validate his absolute authority. Which leaves us with this final thought. We've cracked the code of Angkor Wat together, revealing a civilization that was fully capable of blending advanced astronomy, mythical timeframes, and brutal political realities into some of the most breathtaking monuments on Earth. But given how much of their society still remains invisible to us, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other secrets are still out there, waiting in the dark, ready to be illuminated by the torches of history? Keep questioning what you see around you, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.